Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the desk. Masked One, Melvin Izzle, Counterfeit, and the one and only Initialize. Game number 2 is upon us, and this is honestly one, gentlemen, where I'm now going to come to you. And I want to talk about the pick and ban phase because we've got a graphic that we've already used before, and I want to bring it back on screen. It's about the pick and ban phase, and the reason is, gentlemen, is there are 4 bans which are incredibly important. We saw some of them be banned, but at the same time, it wasn't flawless. Gentlemen, I'm gonna come over to you first, Initialize, because I mean,
Yeah.
DFM, my dude. Like, we've seen this adaptability out of DFM in the past, their pick and ban phase. We've seen them do mind games in playoffs itself. Is Trundle just another evolution harking back to spring of 2020?
I mean, pretty much. I mean, there's no surprise Steel plays. He's played it for years, put a lot of time into it, looks very good on it. He turns up top and he gets first blood on Kinatu. He helps set up a dive that they don't get kills, but they burn a lot of resources. And that's just it. That those top 4 bans were kind of for the last patch. Don't get me wrong. Things like Viego still in my mind pretty strong, despite, obviously some touches against him and all the rest of it. You could still play things like Diana, I think, even post some of these other nerfs. But like the fact that there are other things you need to be aware of is a bit scary. And basically, DFM came into this pick and ban phase, and nothing there is a surprise on a global scale. Nothing is a surprise there in terms of DFM's champion. People go Arya on Rise, that feels pretty okay. Leona for Gang, yeah, I've seen him do a lot of good stuff on that. Trundle for Steel, he's been doing that for years. Ebby's Gnar, synonymous with the guy. And the fact they basically, yep, we'll play standard. We'll be able to play side lanes. We'll be able to play team fights. Nothing was surprising, and they still basically just play a very calm early game and then just run over the game. And that is a little bit problematic because they basically just got to scale up and win. Like, I need to see something more from Rascal Jesters in that early and mid game.
I'm gonna come over now back to you, Counterfeit, because I think that sets you up perfectly. This is Hachimecha playing a slightly different champion. He's on that Lee Sin. I mean, the Jesters, they had some opportunities. It looked okay for the first, 5, 7, 8 minutes of this game, but they just couldn't make it work. What would you like to see them do differently maybe in this pick and ban phase?
Well, this was one of the stats that came up during the game itself. Is the proximity for Hachimecha was really weirdly low, but it's actually very much on brand for them. So I think the good news is however involuntarily, Hachimecha got off the Xinjiao, which is, a little bit dicey for them. I think I'd love to see them, the big problem I think we had for the Lee Sin was DFM were just too good to fall for any of the general Lee Sin tricks. With that in mind, I prefer to see Hachimecha on something like the Sejuani, which is, if you're not going to be around in the early going, at least when it comes to the team fights, you can contribute something semi-reliable rather than trying to rely on tricks, which, as we've already seen, are not going to work.
Okay, so we also need to put recap on Lissandra to counter Arya, which they mind games into LeBlanc, and then they get the full Freljord buff. I'm not sure who they play in the top lane. Ornn, probably, right? And you get the full Freljord buff. You play the bot lane that they did last time. I'm starting to see it now. Maybe you do full Freljord. This isn't Legend of Runeterra, though. This is League of Legends and Melvin Izzle. There was a Nidalee ban. There was a lot of things that were weird about this pick and ban phase. We've talked about it a few times coming into game 2. There's adaptability. We've already had that from Initialize and Counterfeit. Where are you sitting?
The jungle global meta thinking right now is that Viego and Xin Zhao, whichever way you lean, it's usually these two that are leaned upon as the top 2, with Trundle being so good because he beats both of them up.
Yeah.
Along with the fact that, as you could see in this game, Rascal Jester proceeded to take into Trundle Syndra and Ashe, two immobile carries who can't get past the Trundle pillar, Kennen, who is their primary flanking engage that can be denied by the pillar, and you're starting to see suddenly why this Trundle is so big, and the fact that it's a flex pick as well. I think that Rascal Jester need to say, alright, Nidalee, yeah, it's scary, but come on now, if you can't play the Trundle, then it just turns off so many important picks for you. I feel like that is the one that needs to hit the bans if Rascal Jester are to make a comeback.
And I would love to just focus, and I'm opening out this to the floor, so first one that gets in gets to talk about it. DFM did a very interesting target ban onto one very specific player in the first rotation. That was Soul, and that was his Ezreal and Ziggs were both taken away. We've seen incredible things on Souls Ezreal. We've actually harkened about it multiple times on our podcast, ladies and gentlemen. Go listen or watch to our podcast, even if technical difficulties do happen. Yep, that was the right look to have initialized at the camera. That was yeah, but what are we thinking? Is this maybe the strong spot of DFM, and are they strong shot of Rascal Jester, and are DFM targeting it?
Yes, to an extent.
Okay.
I think it helps that Recap plays the Ziggs as well, so it's a flex ban. We know he plays that one as well. It's just very strong. And again, it's potential that Ziggs is very self-reliant. It could free up Secret a bit more. Obviously, the LJL generally has a lot higher duo proximity than pretty much every other region by a significant margin, partly because we do have some hyper carry bot lanes like Sol and Secret, and the ability to maybe unlock Sol to be a bit more independent, still do that damage would have been nice. And the other thing is Sol's Ezreal is just disgustingly good. It's really, 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 really good. To the point where if you're wanting to kind of neuter Sol's prowess in a game, his ability to affect things, like getting him off something like that, which has a lot of self-reliance, a lot of self-agency that could do a lot of damage, and potentially, to an extent, outranges a lot of your comp and could make, outside of Varus, everyone else's life a little bit difficult. I think it's a really smart ban. Zoe as well, it's something that Recap's done a lot. So you get a flex pick and a ban against probably the two most comfort champions for your mid and bot laners, who are your two primary DPSs.
Very true. Anyone else got any other thoughts?
I think that one of the main things that goes with the Ezreal and the Ziggs is the fact that it can be alone in the lane and neutralize it bot, because
with that wave clear that initialized mentioned,
exactly. So it means that we can potentially see, if they were to get their hands on either of them, Secret going on a more active pick, something like the Leona himself, or even the Nautilus in a bad matchup. It doesn't matter if you're in a bad matchup if you're roaming mid all the time. And I think that's one of the parts that DFM aren't necessarily scared of, but it's one of those added almost variance factors that if they allow through, it can swing the game out of their favor. That it's good that they've recognized it, but it is something that as the series goes on, if any more power picks end up having to be banned out by them, even if we see DFM go over to red side, then that's something we do need to keep our eyes out for.
I would
go for it.
I would like to put in, we're kind of talking about picks a little bit that are kind of solve the problems that Rascal Jester had in the first game. And I think one of maybe the larger problems they had was the inability to make plays for themselves. So I think maybe Rascal Jester, if they do go down that route, that they're maybe going to be led by the nose by Detention FocusMe, if they spend the whole of this best of 5 trying to catch up to what's being done to them rather than trying to set up plays for themselves.
Well, gentlemen, I'm going to come to each of you and ask, is your prediction changing? Or when we go over to our casters in just a moment, are you going to be expecting the exact same as after that first game? Coming to you first, Counterfeit, because I have to. Is it going to still be the Jesters? Are they coming back? Is this how you predicted? DFM win that first game and then Rascal Jesters rally it back?
This isn't exactly going according to plan, but my secret weapon, of course, coming to this, as it always is on the LJL, is that I don't have any credibility to lose, so I can just say whatever I want, and then I can just walk away at the end of it and be like, yep, I don't care. So I'm fully prepared to get behind the idea that I expected the Rascal Jesters to maybe surprise us in the first game and get a win. They didn't do that, but I'm still sticking with a 3-2 all the way to the end of game 3 and the potential 3-0.
I love your resolute. I absolutely adore it. Initialize.
I am changing my prediction.
Oh.
I think it'll be 3-0 DFM, and if nothing changes, these games are going to be sub 30 minutes, every single one of them.
Oh, we're going.
Rough. I'm staying 3-0 as well. I'm staying 3-0. That's rough.
You're saying, all right, let's get it over to our casters. I'm also a 3-0. Nightmare and Middlecott, take it away.
Wonderful, Middlecott. I believe you're currently muted, and I believe we are currently into the picks and bans.
Let's go. Well, I'll tell you someone else that was muted. Soul, that game, didn't have agency at all. DFM banning away the Ezreal and the Ziggs. Once again, really want to reduce his impact. But Recap didn't look too bad on the Syndra, is going to be picking that one up.
The thing is that I would actually contest that somewhat, because individually, Recap didn't look bad on the Syndra, but it was awful playing into DFM's comp that last game. Like we saw, did functionally nothing to Gang's Leona. We see that locked in again. Now the Syndra has to play against the Solar Flare, yet again, has to play against someone who can be very tanky, yet again. And if Kanatu is going to go towards something like the Kennen in the top side once again, that is going to be a real problem for Rascal Jester if they don't blow open the early game. And because we saw Hachimecha and I'd say Secret as well, not being able to make an impact in the first 15 minutes of the game, Rascal Jester didn't have any guns to bring to bear for the mid-game fights.
Yeah, and I love the bans actually. Just to briefly go back to them quickly. Exactly the same from both teams, apart from DFM banning the Trundle that they played to great effect in last game. We talked about them being a team that has been in high pressure scenarios. They've gone to MSI, they've gone to Worlds, and playing these mind games in these best of 5 series can really hurt a Rascal Jester side that has so much inexperience. It's going to be the Renekton locked in for Kanatu to match up against Ebby's Nah. I feel like this is the most LJL top lane that we're going to see.
And this is also Kanatu's most played this split, played 4 games of it in the regular season. Hachimecha, however, somehow has managed to dodge the Diana for the entire split. Rascal Jesters will now have to go up against Steel's Lee Sin, so a flipping of the coin in terms of who has priority, I suppose, on that champion. We don't have double AP solo laners from Rascal Jesters again. We do have the AP jungler coming out, however, so there's still those 2 AP damage sources, which means that if you're going to build Merc Treads in the mid lane again, you're going to be doing double time. I do think Renekton is an okay matchup into the Gnar, particularly if you're proficient at that champion, but it is one which can go, dare I say, even worse than the Kennen matchup if the Renekton gets behind.
Yeah, but what I like from Rascal Jester is it feels like they've recognized in this pick ban phase where they're strongest. They've got 2 solo laners that should be all right in most blind pick scenarios. Obviously, the Renekton was picked into the Gnar. Now they're leaving counter picks for their bot lane. Soul has been the best player on this team, I think, by far throughout the regular split. Wasn't able to have that impact in the first game. And I want to see something a little bit more hyper carry out from him, something that really enables him to be this big ADC god that we know he can.
And speaking of, the most impactful players on this map, of course, Arya not going to get 2 of their signature champions. I know we haven't seen the Echo this year, but in 2020, Arya's Echo was sublime to behold. It's been a while since brought out, but Rascal Jester is obviously not chancing that. But you're right, Sol has been the hyper carry amongst hyper carries up there with Honey, really, for the LJL. And his numbers have been absurd. Not going to get themselves an Alistair or a Thresh to back up that champion, though. I think it's very important to get Secret onto some form of engage, though. Rel tends to be the go-to after a lot of those other champions have been picked away. It's okay into something like Leona because they can't stop your dash. And now Sol gets something he can play a little bit closer to the edge with. It's the Kalista. Playing into the Varus can be annoying because you get tagged by the E, you get slowed, your attack speed goes down. But at least it's something which now Sol and Secret get to call the shots with and also have the damage to follow up against.
Yeah, I think that's the main thing for me, is you're giving agency to what have been your star players. Interesting to see that Sol hasn't actually, Secret hasn't actually played the Rel this split, and Secret's only had 1 game on the Kalista that I believe he lost. So we're getting a little bit deeper down in terms of those champion pools, and here's something that we love to see. It's the Zoe locked in for Arya.
Okay, let me take you down a trip on memory lane for Zoe's Arya, because you look at his career stats for a lot of different champions, say, wow, his LeBlanc's awesome. God damn, look at that Silas, crazy. You look at his Zoe, he's played a lot of games of it, and he hasn't actually won that much on it, partly because he has had to be put into 1v9 situations on quite poor teams. Playing this champion before. We saw this pick a lot at MSI. What DFM would do with it is brute force priority in the mid lane, because you come out of Fog of War with the Zoe, and then you just paddle star from a very long range, and there's a lot of damage at level 1 for an ability which can go AoE, of course. Very interested to see how DFM play around that now, particularly against the Syndra, who does have a bit more liberty to spam out Qs at the level marks, because their Q has gone down from 60 mana down to 40 on this patch. So, Arya versus Recap, not going to be as straight, Rise just outscales you, builds Merc Treads, OGG, but it's a lot more skill matchup with kill threat going either way.
Yeah, and I like that we are seeing adaptation. Obviously, not necessarily in the ban phases, but in the picks, this is very, very different from Rascal Jesters. DFM, it feels like they're kind of sticking with what worked for them last game. I'm expecting Utapon and Gang to really be a little bit quiet until Gang starts making these movements into the top side of the map, which we did actually see a lot from him in the previous game. But then Ebby and Arya are going to be expecting to get those advantages in the solo lanes, and then Steel can help snowball those into objectives across the map.
Recap has always been a Syndra player, though. And, of course, last game, individually, Recap was not the issue. In isolation, that Syndra was fine.
Yeah.
But then you factor in double AP solo lanes, them having to build more treads as well, suddenly up against, the Leona, which gets ungodly tanky even from the support role. Like we said, that impact was muted. This time, you are against a champion which you can get on top of fairly easy, I would say, when you've got a Rel and you've got a Diana charging in, potentially Renekton and flash stuns, and of course, pretty much everyone has a way to get on top of the Zoe and really start threatening them, even the Renekton if they do get that flash W, like we were saying. So this is going to be a lot easier for Rascal just to actually make a meaningful pick at the start of the fight, and that's the kind of agency which I think the desk and ourselves too have been asking for Rascal Jester.
Yeah, it's that ease of execution. So when you're playing against a very good team, often going back to basic is the best way to beat them. You can try and cheese them, but often that doesn't work because you're just playing weaker champions. But all of the picks that have come through for Rascal Jesters are very strong in their own right. And the team fight is pretty straightforward. You throw in Secret, then you throw in Secret again, then Secret goes in again.
Well, I choose you.
It's everything. It's almost like we'd have Megamin in the... No, that's not... Do you know what? I'm going to have to stop here now, Mara, because I'm a level with you, okay, very quickly.
Go for it.
Okay, this is a little bit off my chest. My exposure to Japanese popular culture isn't as high as necessarily some of the other people in the LJL.
Okay,
so when you're saying...
What are you leading to here?
When you're saying Pikachu, I choose you...
I said, well, I choose you.
I don't...
It's the same thing. Callista's like, wow, I'm gonna throw them out onto the battlefield.
I don't know what that means.
Okay,
I've heard it like a Pokemon thing, but what does it actually mean?
It is a Pokemon thing, because in Pokemon, you have a Pokeball, which the Pokemon is inside, and you lob it onto the field, and they come out of the Pokemon ball, and then the Pokemon's there. That's effectively what happens, because Callista basically does the same, but with a bit more Shadow Isles magic.
Ooh, a little bit of magic, and we're going to need a little bit of magic from Rascal Jesters in this game too against DFM if they want to make this series go the distance. A very dominant win from Detention FocusMe in the first one. Rascal Jesters will be looking to turn it around. Hachimecha, like we mentioned on this diner, not a pick that we've really seen him pull out, but I think it fits into what their composition wants to do very well. Arya starting off with a bubble. Okay, well, this is bad news bears for Diana. Forced to flash away. And your engage potential has suddenly just taken a massive hit.
Tell me you don't know which skill to start on a mid laner without actually saying it. Both mid laners starting with their CC abilities on the E. So we have a Sleepy Triple Bubble and a Scan of the Week. About that level 1 brute force priority from Paddle Starring out of range. Not going to happen in this case. Steel is now going to have the flash up in that matchup, which means Diana, if they find the Lee Sin, is going to be in a bit of a difficult situation. Hatchet also looks like going to be maybe 2-3 seconds late to their first camp. Not the largest timing, really, and particularly with Diana, you aren't looking to make first clear plays. That's not really identity of your champion. You do a full clear, you reverse... Wow, I'm gonna push you away, but actually not.
You're expecting a Dark Sphere to be there.
I was just like, wow, stun at level 1. I'm like, wait, that doesn't happen. Okay, cool, right. But so just come back to Hatchet, because this is a thing that we brought up when V3 were playing with the substitute jungler of Kanatu coming in. Not Kanatu. Unica. Sorry, just the K in the name. Guess we just different word association. But when Unica came in,
it's a fun game.
Yeah, they chucked onto the diner and said, you just get a full clear. You check clear really quickly, and you just respond to players post level 6. And that's kind of what happened at that point. Arya doing this thing where you just you spam through your spells, and as Zoe, because I hate that champion, you just get loads of free damage because you're passive. You just spell blade in between each one. It doesn't have an internal cooldown. You can just keep doing it over and over. And Arya just says, okay, you don't have a Dark Sphere. That's most of your, well, all of your early game pressure. Good luck with that.
Oh, Soul spotting out Steel, who's going for the same path he actually went in game 1. This buff to buff into Gromp to grab that early level 3. But because he's been spotted out by Rascal Jesters, who won't necessarily be able to make the early plays, unless he wants to get a little bit of an invade off into Hatchemetcha. But that ward is going to spot out the Lee Sin. That's really heads up play.
It is very heads up play. Bot lane does have priority though from Rascal Jester, and they are moving back. So this is effectively just going to be delaying from Steel. It actually resets the buff. It's not going to lead to a great deal because at the end of the day, the jungler is wasting the time of the other jungler, but kind of wasting their own time at the same moment consecutively. What this does do is buy a bit of a reprieve for the bot lane, which, I mean, they haven't burned any pots. They haven't really had any HP taken away from them in any significant amount. Steel just going to rush across mid lane, go get some priority, potentially go towards a double scuttle. That's what we could get from it.
But Kinatu is on his way down. Hatchemetcha is in the area as well. It's going to be a very quick 2v2. There he goes in with the Lunar Rush, forced to ward hop away, and that's a flash burnt by Steel. Not respecting the solo laners of Rascal Jester.
Plays everywhere now.
From Gang going in. The Chat Repel comes out though. Aftershock has fallen off, but the damage doesn't come out from Rascal Jesters. Again, these early games, it's posturing, but it's not connecting on any kills.
No, and what we saw this time was Kinatu come down for the first play, force the flash wave from Steel. Yes, that's all well and good, but he didn't have his rage bar up to get an empowered W for the stun. Now, Arya manages to brute force some priority again in the mid lane, gets to teleport back, and Steel gets himself, after a bit of a back and forth, a double scuttle on the map versus the Diana, which they did put down a little bit early.
Yeah, but the thing, because of all that wasted time where Steel wasn't clearing, these topside camps are all level 1 for him, whereas Hatchemetchas are starting to respawn. So in terms of experience, I'd expect the Diana, with the faster farming as well, to be able to get a little bit of a lead over Steel.
Potentially, but that means that if both of these champions are further behind, and one of them is more item dependent than the other, you could say advantage DFM in that regard. Also, it has been a criticism we have had of Hatchemetcha in the past.
Yeah.
Not the best player from behind. Not someone that is as respectful about the plays which they can be prey to, as opposed to just them being on the front foot. So now I'm interested to see, okay, you're put into that position where you are behind against the best team in the league, by many people's very valid assumption.
Yeah.
What's going to happen in this series? Have you evolved? Have you managed to improve that as a player?
And the thing is, you really don't want to be in that scenario when you are on Diana, a champion that is so reliant on just being able to blow people up, and it's the first time that you've played her all split. Maybe this is something that Hatchemetcha has been practicing a lot in scrims and in solo queue, but pulling it out in this scenario feels a bit risky.
Hatchemetcha has always played a lot of weird stuff. He's been a big Skarner player in the past. His Kayn is probably his signature pick, actually, in terms of the weird stuff that he does bring out. However, you are kind of right in terms of, okay, how risky is it to pull out something which isn't necessarily in a good position or something that you haven't practiced? Hatchemetcha last playoffs got Mujinned, where he'd first pick Hecarim every draft, and then Olaf would get picked into him and he'd have an awful time of it. And he didn't adapt mid-series that particularly well. Of course, in this game, it's not necessarily an analog to the first game, as he had he managed to actually do pretty well in terms of getting his individual advantages in that one. The question is, though, you have the agency to be a big teamfight menace in this one. Can you do that from behind, like we were saying?
You might not need to, though, because Rascal Jesters are definitely standing up a little bit taller than they did in previous games. Arya doesn't have access to the teleport, so we'll have to walk towards the top side. And with Hatchemetcha in the area as well, Kinatu is just able to bully Ebby away from this CS, going to deny so much and take a plate for himself, but Detention FocusMe are in the area.
They are, and I think they're just here to stave off the attempt. This is what we saw last game, of course, in terms of what the DFM do when they get pushing lanes and they get the first chance to move on the map. What they tend to do is just try and arrive at the play regardless if their champion is in a power spike or not. See, Recap actually landing the stun there, denying 1 minion away from turret. As now you can see, at least Ebby picks up half of the wave, missed a cannon, missed a couple of melees, manages to pick up, about 8 CS under turret regardless, because Kinatu did a good job of stacking up the wave. Rascal Jester not being able to quite as thoroughly punish as DFM did, though, in return in the first game.
Yeah. As we see Secret going forward, going to get stunned on with the flash as well. There goes Gang with the beautiful Attract Repel, actually, but there's no damage coming out, and it's going to be first blood going over to DFM.
Such a close series of plays in that CV2 where you see, okay, right, there's no way for the Varus Leona to stop you from getting the crash down. Well, there kind of is if you just flash out of it, right? And I'm fairly sure that leads to no aftershock being put through in the first side of that play. Utbon then turns around with multiple stack E's and Q's in terms of the auto attack to manage to get in between them with the Halo Blades active. That is more than enough with the W active for the execute damage on the arrow to take down the Rel after that point. Rascal Jesters falling down and making a rare mistake in a 2v2.
Yeah, and that's the one thing that you really didn't want to happen, because Soul is sort of set up to succeed in this competition. You don't have as much damage coming out of the top lane, obviously Kanatu on the Renekton in this game, as opposed to the Kennen. So the Kallisto really needs to pop off. We do see Rascal Jester starting up this Rift Herald now, but they've got the earlier rotate and will be able to pick this one up for free.
Well, they do. So, Secret does come back from the Death Chamber, goes immediately topside and says, lost in bot lane, may as well go to get a victory elsewhere. And that Herald is at a good time at this point. You can use that to crush through some plays. Already got the one in the top lane from Kanatu's earlier hard work. But as it stands, DFM keeping even in gold. Rascal Jester slightly in the advantage. We're waiting for, again, the next real play to start happening. The Dragon is available. That's something that wasn't taken particularly early last time. I think in modern League of Legends, we tend to see less of a priority on take Dragon as soon as it spawned than we have done in other previous metas, just because you want to be available on the map earlier and give yourself the ability to respond to a lot of these plays.
Yeah, and both the top laners will be able to respond, as neither has burnt TP available as such. So if a dragon fight is going to break out, Evie and Kanatu will be in the area. Looking at this Syndra, though, in the mid lane, Recap piloted this in game one, and he looked decent enough in the lane, but wasn't able to translate that into the team fight. Again, he's looking pretty good, up 15 CS or so against Arya on this Zoe, feeling pretty good.
Exactly, and again, Syndra is a champion which has regained some of the early game prowess that they lost at the start of the season when there were so many nerfs to that champion. But also remember that, of course, Arya has been pulled across the map multiple times. Recap has made sure to punish that. Now we have DFM able to approach this from multiple fronts. Arya lands asleep, but it looks like DFM decide to cut their losses, not go towards this kind of fight, particularly with the Callista having their ultimate available and having another form of engage that DFM would have to keep on tapped.
I'll tell you what, aside from that 2v2 kill in the bot lane, as Recap may get caught out here, but the Sleepy Bubble Trouble doesn't quite connect. Apart from that 2v2 kill in the bot lane going against Rascal Jesters, they've looked a lot cleaner than DFM this time around.
They have done, and of course, you do have to caveat, okay, double scuttle start for Steel as Arya miraculously missed that battle star.
Yeah, that was a bit weird.
Too skinny a hitbox. Please buff right. Actually, please do not do that. I'm not sure my mental state would survive that one. But yeah, no, as you're saying, Rascal is much more stable early game. That's probably the way to put it. And this might be the difference of DFM playing with Ryze and against Ryze, and maybe that's something which Rascal just haven't identified for themselves, are not having that same ability to instantly push a wave into having the semi-global pressure as well. DFM potentially looking towards a recap again, but as it stands right now, it is just shoving out and returning back about their business.
Yeah, so are either team particularly happy about the game state being as it is? The gold lead is fairly negligible for Rascal Jesters, but might have to hold that as they're setting up for a play in the bot side.
I was about to say, I mean, you do now have the ultimates to start engaging like this.
Yeah, immediately onto Gang. Doesn't have the flash available. We'll just use it there. And that means the play from Rascal Jesters is dissuaded. Hatchmetra will summon up this Rift Herald, but the sleep lands onto Soul, cleanses away. Now it feels like you're in a little bit of a bad scenario, getting poked from multiple directions, but Secret is immediately going to go onto Gang. But that's not the target you want to get. That's the one you want. Hatchmetra onto Utapon, but there's no follow-up, and the Diana will fall down.
The flashes!
Is Arya just going to keep flashing forward, lands the Sleepy Bubble Trouble onto Soul, who uses his own summoner, but Steel is also in the area. Gang getting poked out and will beautifully watch the ultimate. Lee Sin's in the area, gets onto Secret, takes him down with ease, and Recap will fall in short order. DFM turn around the play beautifully.
They do, and this is the threat of being uncoordinated with such an early spike in the gauge comp. Now the 1v1, everyone's fighting.
Oh, but the rage is coming through for Ebby. He's about to go mega wallops down. The flash is available. One more hit would take out Kinatu. TP coming out from Arya as well. Oh, they just gonna give it over. Boom! There we are. The Powder Star of the auto. Arya gets another kill.
Oh, Arya gets about 4 flashes amongst all of the different escape routes that Rascal Jesters try to use. Adding insult to injury, that was actually Kanatu's teammate's flash, which ends up getting him killed on the top side. And much like that last game, all it takes is one bad phase of play where DFM capitalize on mistakes. Gang, I love how this player has turned up in this series. We've waited for this guy to turn up for the entire split, really, because after that spring split, we knew that Kazu was going to be moved out for this player. Gang tanks up the initial engage, comes out and realizes, actually, you know, I can still take all this damage. Exhaust was huge, and the most important thing here is Sol and Recap are not actually dealing damage. Arya gets 1 flash, gets a 2nd flash, gets a sleepy trouble bubble to lock down the next one, force out the flash there too, picks up another one off the floor, and this is the mobility advantage you get if things go to the very worst case scenario, and that's something which I like to talk about in a lot of different games because it's often overlooked. But sometimes if you commit to a play, you must finish it, you must stand and fight, because you know there is no reasonable escape that you can have.
Yeah, and this is just Ebby standing up and fighting against Kinatu. We talked about the young rookie trying to face off against the old god that has become Ebby, and this is just so cute. Arya TPing him, picking up the kill. Ebby's all right to give it over to him. You want the gold on the Zoe rather than the Gnar. And it was looking so good for Rascal Jesters, but I feel the Caster Curse came out at the perfect time to benefit DFM.
Absolutely, and it is just the worst possible timing. Because you're sat there like, wow, Rascal Jesters have a dive. They can start snowballing through the Callista. But as it happens with so many dominant 2v2 champions, and I guess the most obvious one of this is someone like Caitlyn, because the way she so obviously falls apart, things don't go their way. Yeah. If you break their early phase of play where they are just the full court press, what do they do after that point? Because now Callista has to stand here against a fed Zoe and a Varus who also deals pretty well against them too, and sit there going, well, okay, cool, I still have I'm going to have a minute gold advantage, but this is not what I picked this champion for. I picked this for early dominance. This is even whatever.
Yeah, I mean, you are going to be picking up the first tower of the game, I believe, so that's a little bit gold into Sol's pocket. Is up 400 versus his counterpart in Utapon, but like you mentioned, the range differential, Varus can just stand a million miles away, and there's enough CC, there's enough pick on DFM that Sol's life is going to be very, very difficult when we come to these team fights, despite the fact that he's picked up this cleanse.
And of course, that cleanse is very necessary at this point. If you ever get tagged by that bubble, you can see exactly what happened in that bot lane play. Forced to blow something at that point. And now the real problem is that Callista is so much a bit of a stat check champion. Yeah. In some ways, because you know you're going to be hopping around in very low range, and you must have the damage to get through a lot of the lifesteal that you have to make sure you actually have the ability to brawl. And if you don't have that as an extra attack stats, things get very dangerous. Arya's jumped too far forward!
Yeah, he is brawling and he is falling, goes into the Zhonya's, but it will not save his life. Sol picks up a kill. Really nice pick for Rascal Jesters.
All right, okay, so speaking about that brawling, Rascal Jesters land the first punch in this particular confrontation, as Arya chooses not to skirmish, confrontation, butting of heads as Arya goes and face plants directly into the wall. And this is the worry about this composition. Arya, fantastic player of the champion, but does not have a great deal of safety. Secret goes and crashes down out of the way of Steel, as now DFM pushing in on one side of the map, losing some pressure on the other. Going to go back to a replay of this one. So I think DFM just kind of, as soon as that portal jump is put in, just like, that's not so good. Maybe if you're very quick-fingered on the stopwatch, you can get out of that one alive. But this is exactly what Rascal Jester's composition is tailored towards. You punish the overstep of something like the Zoe, and you can run away with an easy pick. And that's something that we praised them for that draft phase. Does give them a bit more agency than that last game.
Yeah, I think we saw it on the vision toggle there. Just after Arya portal jumped forward, we saw all of the members of Rascal Jesters approaching. It was so over-aggressive, so unlucky. It just like, freeze frame. This is me. You're wondering how I ended up in this situation.
It's like Kazu is tucking his players into bed and is like, "Oh, did you check?" Aria's like, "Did you check over the wall for the monsters under the bed?" Sorry, Aria. There's no such thing as monsters. And it's like, therapist. The Rascal Jester's members over the wall aren't real. They can't hear you. You, Rascal Jester's players over the wall. Vision toggles on. As Aria is sadly not able to get out of that one. Still, of course, in a very good position. Down a bit in that CS, but the kill gold more than makes up for it. And now they're setting up for a decent skirmish.
Ooh. And this is what their composition is so good at doing. The long range of the Zoe and the Varus means that you can siege with impunity and pick up that mid lane tower gun. I mean, they could push their vision a little bit further forward, which I think they need to do, as Rascal Jesters did pick up the first 2 Drakes of the game. And whilst the Soul isn't necessarily the win condition that it used to be, still going to be very potent, as Zarya gets a big chunk onto Soul.
So most of the time, you can judge whether Zoe is going to run over the game or not based on which outer tower falls first, the enemy's mid or your mid lane. And right now, Rascal Jesters have lost theirs. This is also going to be a Cloud Rift. So you're not going to have an Infernal Rift to strip away some of those walls as well, which means that there are less bubble angles to land. Aria, regardless of the CS deficit, is happy with the way that this game is playing out. And as you're saying, with the Varus 2, this poke composition, this siege nuke coming in from a bubble into a WQ arrow from the Varus or anything like that is incredibly potent. Rascal Jesters don't really have the luxury of staying around for 2 rounds of regular ability cooldowns at this point, because if they land, fight's over at that point. Go home.
Yeah. Do want to touch on itemization very quickly. Seeing this from Utapon, it was the Umbregrave last game from him on the Varus. He's chosen to go for it again. And it's the Serpent's Fang Rush. Hasn't even built up the Mana Moon yet. So really utility focused, understands that he's got enough damage on the rest of his team and is just there to land the poke, as well as also help out with some vision denial.
They're also very cheap items. Serpent's Fang on this patch is such a stat stick. A lot of the time, you don't even need to pick it into overly shield-heavy compositions. In this case, it is good because, particularly because of the Callista, right? The Callista is the core of this composition from Rascal Jester. And you get through that shield bow, that's one less ability to brawl around and keep things working. Of course, the Dionist shield as well, certainly very useful. But almost steals away that would have been insult to injury.
Yeah, it would have been an unfortunate circumstance, but it's not game 1. We're not having stolen Rift Scuttlers. The Secret is jumped up, but is able to crash down. Just getting towards the 20-minute mark, Baron is going to be on the table. Cloud Drake in 30 seconds as well. And DFM, with that mid lane tower taken a few minutes ago, are able to set up a little bit better in the river.
And now we get to see what DFM can do with superior map position. How much damage can they land? That's a part of a HP bar on the rel, one of the primary engages, certainly very important. Of course, they have the cholesterol to keep themselves a measure more safe than one without. Okay, so that's one set of cooldowns used from DFM. Let's go for the second one. Do they land it? No, not in that case. What about the arrow? This is... Okay, Ebby gets the Mega Gnar as well. But you see how important this is for Rascal Jesters to find and engage quickly, because while it is lucky that they haven't got hit by everything, every time one of these things lands, it removes a sizable percentage that they can win the next fight.
Yeah, but big thing. Ebby has not got the Mega Gnar anymore. Will be a little bit tired for the remainder of the fight, but that doesn't seem to matter, as finally the poke is starting to land. Kinatu taken down to half HP and still looks to start up this Drake.
Okay. Well, that's three cooldown rounds used by DFM, and you can see the HP bar starting to look a little less good for Rascal Jester. This is the difference with the map positioning. DFM can just keep going for forever. Aria finding the right distances to not get jumped on with impunity either. Rascal Jesters, you need to find and engage. Every time these arrows, these paddle stars keep flying through, you are in grave danger.
Oh, bubble landing onto Hatchet, not going to be followed forward. But look at the summoner spells available for DFM. All the flashes, but that's going to be a TP into the backside. Kinatu is trying to make something happen. Salt is going forward. Secret finds his way onto into the backline, onto Utapon as well. The damage being dealt. Evie is nowhere near the fight, but Steel is he's in the middle of everything. But Soul just takes him down with ease. In goes Kinatu. Here comes Mega Ebby as DFM are winning out the backside of the fight. Soul's trying to lifesteal up, but he's not going to be able to in time as Kinatu gets caught and taken out. DFM find the fight once again.
And actually, that is not nearly the worst case scenario for Rascal Jester. They do find their way onto the backline. Utapon, you can see his blinking health bar. That is through the good work of Sol and Secret to get to the backline. Plus, Sol actually outplays Steel in the back too as the Lee Sin goes in. But they don't quite have the stats. They certainly don't have their full HP bars either, even though they had done a good job of dodging out on some of those skill shots. But this is how it all starts again. You can see that gang, as soon as the Callisto pull just goes, well, I'm just going to walk forward, try and put down the door, and it's all well and good that this combo comes in the backline, but Recap's not there. Recap can't get a multi-man stun. Of course, that comes through later. He starts trying to walk up, but then, wow, you're behind enemy lines. Yes, the scout of the week is good, but the damage has been done by Ebby just keeping that Syndra completely out of that fight when it mattered.
Yeah, it was a little bit late on that one, a little bit out of position as well. DFM able to capitalize. Yeah, it was.
No, he was just on the wrong side of the fight, and it's well played to Ebby.
Yep.
And of course, Rascal Jesters, knowing that they needed to find a quick fight, find a quick and dirty engage, just be like, look, I mean, cleanness be damned. We need to make sure that another round of cooldowns doesn't come in. This is what you can sometimes pay for with it.
Yeah. And I think in denying the Cloud Drake as well from Rascal Jesters when they've got all of these big high impact ultimates. I mean, the Unleash Power, the Magnet Storm, the Callisto ultimate as well as the Diana. These are big team fight cooldowns that if you're able to get multiple rotations of them off, can be game changing for you. DFM's lead has been cut short a little bit down to 2k, but it definitely feels like they're the team playing with more control.
Yeah, and the thing about not just Cloud Soul, because I think different champions benefit from Cloud Soul than Cloud Dragons in a lot of ways. For instance, I'm a big fan of someone like LeBlanc with Cloud Dragons. Cloud Soul, matters much less. Ebby doing a good job here. He has the Sundra.
Oh, but there comes the Dominus out from Kanatu, gets the heal away, but kited out beautifully, gonna pay for it with his life, 1-for-1 in the bot lane.
Oh, so close. I was wondering if there'd be a Triumph proc coming in, but of course, I think it's actually going to be... I don't know if that's the runes that were taken there from Ebby. It is a 1-for-1 overall. It's still, I guess, a bit of a show of dominance from Ebby, saying, you can kill me, but only if you've got a tower there too. Gold onto the Gnar, of course, helps a lot, because, of course, when you've got these, particularly someone like the Callisto trying to jump into a Gnar, if the Gnar has those extra stats, it's so difficult for the Callisto to actually team fight cleanly again, because the Gnar can stand and fight after a while. And now Rascal Jester's, okay, finding a pick on Steel, maybe.
Yeah, looking to knock him up, looking to grab him down. The Magnet Storm comes out, the Attract Repel as well. Only lands onto one, though, and the Lee Sin will fall, but that's a lot burnt from Rascal Jesters to get the pick.
It is. But this is why, you know, between games 1 and 2, one thing that you were saying to me, and I completely agree with, because Rascal Jester's bot lane has been one of the best in the league. In fact, they were their all-pro of spring. Give agency to this duo. Get Sol into the game. Get some engage onto Secret. That's what they have, and in a solo play, well, I say a duo play between them, a solo lane, I guess, for them. They managed to find themselves a very important pick, and that keeps them in this game yet again. It opens up top side of the map, gets some vision around that top side, pick onto the jungler, top lane turret down. All of these things are useful for the next phase of play for Rascal Jesters, because it stops DFM from just crowding them out of this Baron area.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what, around about half an hour ago, we would have been, well, around about 45 minutes ago, we would have been facing down the end of the game for Rascal Jesters. 25 minutes on the clock, obviously game 1 ending in 27. It's been a much better performance from them this time around. The gold advantage for DFM is basically negligible. This has got to feel so good for Rascal Jesters to bounce back in such a strong way after that game 1 performance.
Oh, absolutely. I think that DFM have picked a slower composition in some ways, because you can't just realm warp for these huge dynamic teamfight players where you very quickly find and engage in unorthodox ways. This is more about, okay, we have Zoe Varus. If one person gets hit by both of these guys at the same time, they die horribly. They are buried underneath the Summoner's Rift in short order, and that means that you just don't get to fight objectives. You don't get to fight around anything. And actually, you know, when DFM did turn up to that Cloud Drake last time, they did crowd out Rascal Jester. They did make them very vulnerable in that state. Question is, without the vision in this top side now, can they do the same thing around Baron? They take themselves a bot lane out of turret. Rascal Jesters do move towards the top side river, and they are actually starting this Baron, speaking of it.
Yeah, Sol is a lot of damage, obviously, on the Callisto, the execute potential as well, but Steel is in the area, and they haven't really been able to push him out at all. Teleport from Ebby is going to force Rascal Jesters to back away. Don't want to burger flip at the Baron.
And at the end of the day, that's what Rascal Jesters were there for. They wanted to get the teleport away from Ebby, so DFM couldn't play the map so slowly that they would have to respond and not just have Ebby winning the side lane matchup like we did see. Even though it was a 1-for-1 in that trade, that was Ebby kind of choosing to go into turret and flex the muscles once more. If we're going to bring that back from game 1. Sol going to get hit by the Baron because Steel is a nasty bloke. Though he life steals off that plenty. I mean, okay,
I think he might just be doing it, Nymera. I don't think
he's lost half his HP for not very much.
Yeah, you're not playing Master Yi. You can't solo the Baron at 27 minutes. That's not how it works. But in the previous team fights, we did see the potential from Rascal Jesters. Now they've got a couple more items. That wombo combo is going to be a bit stronger. And with them starting it up, Gang has just reset, so he won't be on the map. If Rascal Jesters could burn through this, it might have an angle. But again, they're just pulling back.
So Sol does have those 3 items, and they are incredibly good at tanking and drain tanking through both frontliners and through objectives too. Rage Blade means that you keep stacking up extra Ren stacks, importantly, to get that execute up to a higher level. But DFM, not going to be hard committing anytime soon, and this is one of the problems with trying to play around, play chicken around Baron, because if you get hit by, again, if it, maybe not the Kalista because they can lifesteal off of the Baron in this case, but if you get hit on the Syndra particularly by this mid AD carry duo of DFM, well, say goodbye to your DPS in the team fight because that's 1 round of cooldowns and suddenly someone's just not able to fight even if they don't die.
Yes, Rascal Jester's not able to fight for the Drake, giving that one up. Second of the game going to DFM, but it might just be a trade as they start up the Baron. Will it be 3rd time's the charm, or will we be channeling the Hawks? As they're staying on it, going down to 8,000. Arya is in the area, lands the bubble onto Soul. Teleport's coming out here as a crash out from Secret. That is a huge chunk onto Soul as Rascal Jester surely just have to back away, but Kinatu is in the backside completely by his lonesome. Heals up a metric butt ton with the Gore Drinker. The Scatter of the Reek stops DFM from going forward, but it might not stop Arya as he went over the wall. Steel lands the Resonating Strike as that's the pullback from Soul, and Rascal Jester's forced out once again.
I mean, this is just Zoe Varus 101. You turn up, you land your sleep on someone. Varus does the damage that the Paddle Star can't always get to. Rascal Jesters try and go for an engage at such an inopportune, mismatched time. Now, Arya jumping forward again, stolen a flash. Rascal Jesters, very, very dangerous set of plays there. Kinatu, I honestly feel chooses completely the wrong time to go for an engage. Very, very dangerous.
Yeah, but Sterak's Gore Drinker balanced items. He doesn't die, which I think is the important thing. I think if he'd fallen down there, then DFM can look a little bit more aggressively at that Baron. But as it stands, no team has really been able to put their mark on that objective. But with the movements from Secret here, I don't think we're going to be seeing quiet for much longer.
No, but of course everyone else has reset, so of course that means that the poke advantage from DFM has disappeared somewhat for now, and they will probably be returning to the theme of that near crime in the topside river. But DFM, they also have more items coming to bear. They have a Muramana now onto Utwan, who is deathless, T0-4. He's got another Dirk in inventory. This Varus spikes very early into the game with this kind of items. Doesn't even have a mythic item at this point, but it doesn't even matter. You see the amount of damage that they do to minions at that point. Now, of course, Kalista is certainly a bit more than a minion, but you have a Sleepy Trouble bubble on them. Still going to be another thing to farm.
Yeah, it has picked up that Null Magic Mantle, so in terms of, well, is it Null Magic Mantle or Negatron Cloak? I can't remember. They've got some Magic Resist, which I think is going to be very high value.
It's been upgraded. It's changed icons somewhat over the last year or two. Sol actually gets caught, cleansed away.
That was very quick, but that is a cleanse that isn't going to be available for the next team fight, which when you're playing this Kalista solo range has to be so slippy, going to be very, very risky.
And also remember, that is an ultimate for a summoner. That is 2 Cloud Dragons on that ultimate of the Chains of Corruption, and that's a lot of CDR built up by all of these items too. This is why, I briefly went into it earlier. There are some champions that don't necessarily care about the soul, but very much like having the having their ultimates off of cooldown so they can just use it on cooldown. One of them is something like the Chains of Corruption. Actually, the Portal Jump is not a bad example of this either, because it allows you to get, your Paddle Star and your Portal Jump cooldown more tightly aligned later into the game, so you can have very high burst combos much more of the time. Sol trying to walk up, get some priority in the mid lane. Secret has the Kalista ultimate, so they can face check, but again, no cleanse, can't save himself this time.
Yeah, will be forced to flash away, though, and will stay alive. The Sonic Wave doesn't connect as Kanatu is diving into the battle side, diving out as well, but Gang's just jumping directly on top of him. Soul can't get into the fight, but here comes Steel getting right into him. Hey! Huge! Big shutdown onto Aria as Recap's going to fall, not before he can take down the Zoe, and here we see Hatchavetcha in the worst place, as it's a 4-for-1 in favor of DFM, and they're going to look to pick up the Baron.
Rascal Jesters cannot find their engage before DFM find their mark. Call him Robin Hood, it's my hometown, and Utapon is the hometown hero of LJL once again, 4-0 and 6. In a battle between the hyper carries, two of our most hyped up AD carries in the region, Utapon looks unflappable in this best of series.
Yeah, the plucky underdog Robin Hood story of Soul is shut down by the Sheriff of Nottingham himself, Utapon. The piercing arrows coming out, and that Chains of Corruption so beautifully timed around Soul's cleanse. We're going to see it here.
And the thing about DFM is that we've never known if they're heroes or villains. Particularly in 2020, that was our storyline for them. But they are always the protagonists. The ult lands true, and again, it's 20 CDR off, 20 haste off of that ultimate. It's up very, very quickly, and Soul does survive. But nor is he turning around damage either. Kanatu, once again, once Soul is in danger, chooses to play Disruption, to play a kind of a rearguard effort, try and come back and find something. Luckily in this fight, at least Recap gets a pretty decent combo onto Aria, rather. Gets the final Q, gets that kill. Yeah. So that's one off the table, but you can see what happens again when they have to try and fight a fighting retreat. It doesn't work for them.
Yeah, Soul got 4 autos in that fight, 3 onto Ebby, 1 onto Steel. That's not the amount of damage that you want your main hyper carry ADC to be doing. Look at Aria, though, in that fight, 4,000, and DFM use that Baron that they've got to get more pressure to pick up this Cloud Drake. So much ultimate ability haste now, and the Soul Point in a few minutes.
And the really great thing for me to benchmark this kind of team is that we have seen Varus Zoe come in from other teams. Think about, CGA, another playoffs team. Surely not one of our strongest LGL teams, but you can see the absolute... see the absolute chasm between the top of the league and then a lowly team like CGA. Memes aside, we'll keep ribbing you for that one. You don't get to get that one. You don't get to go a whole split supporting that team without getting some ribbing for when they fall apart. But DFM are just so far above in so many of these teams, and it seems like they're above. Rascal Jester, even still, Soul eats another Paddle Star. Wits End built up. It means that they are not going to lose half their HP, just a measly third of it at that point. And Aria has 30 ability haste onto their ultimate now with that third Cloud Dragon picked up. Ebby gets out of that scatter the week, and DFM, they have a Baron, they have everyone alive on the map, and they're crushing down as the base.
Yeah, and whilst it's not been as swift as Game 1, there's still been this inevitability about it. It's almost like playing COD Zombies, and you start getting up to the higher rounds, and you know that eventually you are just going to get overrun as the massive poke comes out from Aria onto Secret. He's going to have to walk back to base, and DFM are going to pick up this inhibitor with ease.
I'm pretty sure that the third map, Darius, translates to something like the Giants. We know how Attack on Titan goes. It's not normally that very good trying to take up that kind of mismatched match up, and Aria just lands so much.
Oh, that's the blue trinket.
He was thinking about flashing forward for that. That
he
was barely in range,
100% was thinking about flashing forward for that. But that's the sort of plays that you can make when you've got this lead, 7,000. The Baron has fallen off now, so you don't get those extra combat stats. But Ebby, look, he's just in the Rascal Jester's space. He's absolutely field time.
Absolutely, and this is, at this point, you're looking at Soul, who would have to jump forward into the Mega Gnar for Rascal Jester to have any reasonable chance of killing him, and you think, wait,
you don't want to do
I
that.
don't want to be close to that guy. I don't want to be closer to DFM. I want to be kiting back. So Ebby says, okay, kite this then. And so we've got ourselves fight not quite coming out. Solar Flare might change that.
Yeah, did whiff though, but there goes the nod from Ebby. Still just chilling in the base. The Scat of the Week doesn't quite connect onto him. Drops back down into that mini form, but Detention FocusMe, it feels like they are just playing exactly on the limit. They know what they can and can't do, and they're playing it out beautifully.
Absolutely are. I want to go have a little bit of a chat about mage itemization here as well, because mages are not necessarily the strongest class in the game right now, especially not in solo queue. They take a while to scale up, and often you are forced to itemize in a way which you're not particularly happy with. However, if you reach Luden's Void Staff Death Cap, that trifecta of items kind of bucks that trend. If you get to go fully all in on the arms race and say, all right, someone is dying when I press my buttons, you do get, hark back to the season 4 through 6, 7 of that moment of power for mages. We've seen how much damage Arya can do if they find their target. And at this point, you look at the itemization options from Rascal Jesters, and they are lacking somewhat.
Yeah, they're a little bit further behind. Plus, that needlessly large rod is going to turn into something spicy fairly soon for Arya. And this Zoe is not one-tapping people already, which I think she probably is, certainly going to be causing a lot more issues for Recap, who hasn't opted towards something like the Banshees or the Zhonya, something defensive. So any poke that can get anywhere near him is just going to stick.
Renekton's behind. Diana's finding it hard to get into the front line. The Syndra needs to be efficient damage because everyone else is going to struggle to kill the first person into the fight. And at this point, well, of course, Recap is too, but you can't kind of like lay down and say, all right, I'm going to go for Banshees. I mean, we saw having to dash with that on the Orianna, right, versus V3 in our first round matchup. Sometimes you just need to bite the bullet and say, I'm going to do damage even if it kills me. And Sol has to cleanse away.
Yeah, bites an arrow to his face. Secret is on the flank, but spotted out. Chains of Corruption do go wide. This could be an angle for Rascal Jesters if they see it. But the Rel is just taken immediately before she can do anything. And this gives the go button to DFM. Gang getting chunked low, but not quite taken down. On the backside of the map, we see Hatchemetcha flashing away from the paddle star. Rascal Jesters getting away with murder, I'd have to feel, with only one going down.
And there's a quick intake of breath from me as I see the Zhonyas in front of the nuclear neutron star coming out of Arya. Quick fingers on the flash, though. Hatchemetcha gets out alive. I don't know if Rascal Jesters can cleanly contest this, though. See how quickly it's going down. Not quite to halfway. Kanatu might be able to find something of an angle.
No Dominus, no Styrax, though. This is a very squishy crocodile, but he's enough to scare away DFM. Scatterweak comes out, doesn't quite connect, but the Baron has been stopped. And with the resets coming out, this means that Rascal Jesters can rotate down and grab this Drake, denying the soul from DFM.
I don't think they can. There's double teleports from DFM. Secret has to go back. There's none of your... you can't use your Fate's Call into your Magnet Storm combo from Secret. Actually, it looks like DFM are not going to contest, though they do have that double teleport. They choose to give over the Dragon. Again, the Soul is not necessarily something which either team is interested in terms of those Dragons. So we are sat on 6 Dragons apiece. And as much as Sam was saying on the desk, hey, probably going to be 30 minutes or less for each of these games from DFM. DFM playing the game a little more slow this time due to the nature of their composition, but Rascal Jester keeping DFM accountable somewhat in macro, if not in these fights.
Yeah, but we are getting towards that 40-minute mark, so the gold lead starts to mean less and less, and compositional differences are really all it, but they're going all in on Gang. This is not the target that you want. That's a very tanky Leona, but Utapon is not tanky enough. The exhaust comes out, but it will not save his life. He dies for the first time this game, and that could be a huge pick for Rascal Jesters.
Well, because Arya isn't here, Ebby is charging up the Mega Gnar, and now we have to see what can you get for this hard-earned fight. And the answer is nothing. There's a wave pushing into the fight. Rascal Jesters burn a lot of different ultimates. They do find the carry. It's gold, it's a shutdown, that's wonderful, but nothing to break the game.
But all importantly, summoners burn from Utapon as well. Obviously not the massive carry Varus with these more supportive items, but still does a heck of a lot in team fights. If Hatchemetcha, if Ganatu can find themselves on top of the Varus at any point, then it would be curtains for him. Secret, though, this is way too far up. Fate's Call is available, though. Does mean a blue buff steal for DFM and more pressure around this Baron.
It is. So, of course, we're getting to that point of the game where actually gold differences, but meaning less and less, but DFM are still incrementing it again. They're still managing to find gaps in the jungle, find those camps. Secret is going to have their recall stopped again. And actually, stopping his support recall at this point in the game is fairly big. I mean, you look down in that support itemization, there are no wards from Secret in inventory. No control wards, nothing from your item 2, and they're stuck at 2/3 HP. DFM strangle out the vision on the top side of the map, but given that ward in the top side, in that top side river brush, they are going to be seen trying to set up their own bush break, and Rascal Jester is not going to be baited in just yet.
Oh, Kanatu might be, though. Here comes the Fate's Call immediately. No flash, no heal, can't do a damn thing. Rascal Jesters find another pick, and they might look to turn it on even harder. Evie is a little bit split from the rest of his team. That's a CP Trouble Bubble landing onto Soul. There goes the Solar Flare as well, but they're not able to follow up with damage. Low health bars on Rascal Jesters, forced to back away once again.
They are. So again, they find another kill. That's good gold, and it stalls out DFM for just a moment, if that. So, Rascal Jesters managing to survive in this game actually longer than I would have thought, given the lead that was built up earlier in this game. But DFM, slight lapse in vision, slight lapse of safe bounds, I suppose. Maybe that's the way to put it in terms of understanding where the threat is coming from. DFM's tried to set their trap and instead walk into one laid down by Rascal Jesters. Question is, all right, okay, you managed to delay this game, but what has this got you? It has gotten 3.5 items onto your main carries. 4, actually full build now.
Full build for Soul.
And I wonder, actually, if you get a death cap onto recap suddenly, is that a point where the itemization starts to really hit? Is that a point where you can start playing around the bigger burst combos? Rascal Jesters might need to pull off this similar Smoke and Mirrors attempt yet again. They are going towards the Baron to try and force the issue.
Ebby has just gone up mega in the bot lane. If he doesn't TP now for the fight, then they won't be able to use that. This Baron is getting taken so low, down to 4k. That's going to be the change of corruption fight out, but it doesn't really grab anyone. The Baron goes over to Soul, picking that one up, but Ebby's in the T-fight. The Nard doesn't connect, though. Completely neutralized. The Gang goes in, but Gang will go down. Rascal Jesters have already got 2 in the fight, courtesy of Soul. And Steel's looking to fall again. There goes Utapon. No flash, no summoners, no hope, and Rascal Jesters with a 3-for-1 right now, turning this game on its head and looking to push us to a 1-on-1 series.
They take 3 kills, they take the Baron. DFM think that, hey, they're on the Baron. That's awesome. We can start poking out. But they don't even get the GA of the Kalista. They don't manage to get the combos and the damage done in time. Rascal Jesters do have the itemization, but Secret steps into Arya.
Yeah, and how big is that, though? That's your main engage taken out. Arya's going to be able to go back, going to be able to refill that health and mana bar, and this might just mean the top lane inhibitor for Rascal Jesters and nothing more. Recap does have TP if he wants to join this fight. Steel is stepping a little bit far forward, but they don't want to go for him.
Of course, this game had to be brought to even through the prowess of this bot lane from Rascal Jester. Soul is becoming a bit of an issue for DFM. They actually can't close down that carry. And Steel struggling to find impact. Ebby nukes out in that fight too. DFM have been denied playing through the strong laning matchup of the Nara and the Renekton in the sidelines as it stands right now. And that forced them into these fights. It forces them to commit to the play and not take it slowly. Even though the Varus and the Zoe are over the wall, they don't have the constant DPS.
Watch Secret, watch Secret.
That Rascal Jester have onto the front line. And yeah, Watch Secret absolutely pins in place those members which can't standard fire over the pit. And then they even managed to save themselves the Fate's Call to re-engage onto Youthborn at the end of it.
Absolutely massive from Rascal Jesters. We didn't give this team a chance, and after game 1, looked like it was going to be a swift 3-0 for DFM. They will be able to pick up this Cloud Soul, but that's not going to give you more damage. That's not going to give you too much more combat power. Rascal Jesters much happier to take this mid lane in trade.
What I will counter with that, though, is remember this game is all about catching someone. It's all about closing that distance on someone like the Kalista. Move speed certainly helps with that, and when you do have someone like the Lee Sin or the Gnar, which can use that to get into the fray in terms of flipping in and using your ultimates to get a big engage, that can be all so important. Remember the mobility advantage, which has shown its head earlier in this game. DFM now have another aspect to play around with that, but they need to use it well, because if they get caught again into the jaws of Rascal Jester's low-range grind-out damage comp, they lose those fights.
Yeah, Soul is just about to get his cleanse back off of cooldown. Such an important summoner spell for him to provide more safety. He has got the GA as well, so it's very difficult to actually kill this Kalista, and DFM are being forced away from their own base. Second inhibitor of the game going over to Rascal Jester. Looking for the engage. Ebby's been caught out. Ebby's been mega. Gang going back in, but the Gnar is completely deleted. Soul could just deal as much damage as he likes to, and he deals a heck of a lot. Hatchemetcha going golden. Steel on the wrong side of the map. And Rascal Jesters may have just done it.
They may have found something. Of course, it's only Ebby. Just keep that in mind. There is not nearly as much, because look at the turnaround damage.
Oh, but the TPs are available for the solo lane, so Recap is going to be able to come in with a full health bar. Going to be elixired up as well at this point. It's a 5v4 that DFM have to win. Popping the QSS is good. Kanatu goes golden, very low on health bars, but Steel is low as well. The poke is starting to come out, though. That's a massive kick landing onto Recap, who's taken low, but not quite taken down. And they can't do the damage on the backside of the fight. It's Gang that drops. No one for Rascal just has fallen until the flash forward from Utapon, but it's not quite going to be
Funnily enough, Prowler's claws away, but will be stunned by Kinatu, and Aria is trying to pop off, but he just can't do it in time, and Rascal Jesters are going to turn around this series and take game 2. It's a late game phenomenon. Rascal Jesters discover their win condition. They stall out the game. They find the picks in DFM. While we predicted a whole hell of a lot of 3-0s on the desk, but they are caught out multiple times in a row. We gotta go point some fingers here and say, all right, how the hell was Utapon allowed to be accessed in that mid game into the start of the late game too? Because DFM, they let the ball drop when it was firmly clasped in their hands.
Yeah, multiple times was caught out without flash, without heal, without any help from his team. Utapon is a player that we know and we love to see him teamfight. But this game, he just wasn't on it. And Soul absolutely tore through the members of DFM in that late game. We're going to go to a very short break, but then our analyst desk is going to break down what was an absolute banger of a game.
Yeah, good luck.
Things, and I've been muted this whole time. Welcome back to the Death Side, everybody, ladies and gentlemen. Here at LJL. We just saw maybe the craziest turnaround, and honestly, the most important thing, a streak has just been broken since week number 2 of the LJL. DFM had not lost a match, and in this second game of the best of 5 series versus Rascal Jester, they not only lost their streak of 13 wins, but they also lost their inhibitor win rate. This is just truly a backbreaking decision. I've got to come over to you, Counterfeit, first for this one, because your boys, they got their first W on the board.
It's hard not to feel a little bit smug right now. So I feel a lot smug instead. The game that nobody predicted, the game that nobody saw coming, the whole way through the game, everybody was looking at the game and saying, it's a done deal. I was the only person saying, look at that gold difference. There isn't a gold difference. Nearly the whole way through the game, DFM, they weren't able to close it out. Rascal Jester, they kept the same game plan from game 1, which is to ride out this incredible early game from DFM to find a way through in the late game. This time, it may have been by the smallest of margins, but it worked.
I mean, Initialize, what's your first thoughts on this?
I think it's a really interesting one. It's one of those ones where Rascal Jester managed to drag it out to the hyper late game, 40 minutes plus, where one pick and the death timers are so long and you really can win it, where you were massively behind in your solo lane XP, particularly towards the top side, but you waited it out, you stalled it out, couple picks back to back on a flashless Utapon in mid lane by using the Fate's Call and the crash down combo with all of that kind of hard engage you can pull out. Really got Rascal Jesters an opportunity, and DFM just didn't have an answer to the double cleanse Soul. They could not blow him up.
And that was something that Counterfeit had brought up on our pre-game show, remember. If the games do go longer, if we stem the bleeding out, maybe we can get there. And coming over to you, Melvin Izzle, this game had several moments where you were looking for clips, thinking about it. Where did you go, and what were your thoughts on this?
Taking a look through, it was DFM's game to lose after a point, the way I was looking at it, because when you have this ahead scenario with Zoe plus Varus, you realistically just have to make sure you secure objectives by getting there first, because it's so difficult to walk into these two, and we saw it time and time again. Soul plenty of times. The clip I originally had prepared was going to be when Sol got picked on the mid lane, and I thought this was just great. It was so nicely done. But if you ever allow Rascal Jester to the objective first, as we will see in what ended up happening, it doesn't really work because you can't face check it. Na'N needs to have Mega. You need to have Steel in a good position to kick, and it's so many situational things that it's a little bit too much to ask for.
Yeah, well, let's actually go into that replay if we can, because I think it sums it up perfectly where we are.
So let's take a look at the situation we have here, and a little talk about levels from Initialize a moment ago. I will draw attention to it. We have level 17 Arya, but level 18 Syndra. Normally, that doesn't really matter, but Syndra, her passive, every time she fully maxes an ability, gets even more value. So she is getting wider stuns, more damage on the W, everything, the full shebang. Sol, higher up levels. Hachimecha, higher up levels. And then it's Ebby and Gang. What on earth do you care about from Gang being one level higher and Ebby being one level higher? The extra hop damage? The slightly better Zenith Blade? None of it's doing anything. So this is just XP-wise, favoring Rascal Jester. And when you have this close of a gold lead at the point in the game, both ADCs are already full items. And realistically, it's just the situation of how you play it as opposed to what's in the inventory. You're so far into the game that let's take a look at how the Baron is actually approached, because this is just Rascal Jester making a call and it paying off, because when you have a Kalista that is this far ahead, she could face tank the Baron on their own. The fact that you have other people with them means that now, as DFM have to approach, well, as you can see here, Ebby is in the side lane clearing minions with Mega Gnar active. So they're already in a dire spot. Yes, teleport available, but this is the best teleport ward they have in the pit. It's not great. So let's take a look at how it ends up playing out from there. Because you have DFM grouping around the side trying to collapse. And it means because Ebby is approaching from so far away, it's a 4v5 for all intents and purposes, which just gives Rascal Jester the confidence to say, Kanatu, zone off these two. The damage dealers, these two are always going to be here. This is the whole benefit of having a Zoe and a Varus on the red side. They could just stand anywhere along here, this crescent, and just provide a massive amount of damage over the wall. So the best thing that Rascal Jester could do is try and leave it all up to Sol, all up to them to try and secure the objective, because it's going to get flipped one way or the other. And you're so far into the game now that you just care about the fight in reality. So moving forward from there, all the damage comes down, drops a little bit, and it goes over to Sol because nobody else was hitting the objective. So, Ebby's arrived. They've got literally the last frame of Mega Gnar available. This bar is all but empty. And you can see they're just trying to get as big of a combo as possible, but Rascal Jester know this. They've already sent everybody to the side over here. We've already had Secret jumping forward now to get in Gang's way, which will mean that in effect, because of the Magnet Storm, Ebby is going to get pulled back just enough that if you watch Sol, they're going to be able to kite out of position and be okay, not get stunned. There you go. It's just a massive Mega Gnar, doesn't do anything. We'll let it resolve a little bit from there, as we do get everybody just collapsing, trying to escape. And frankly, at this point, you look at it and go, Sol is alive with Flash, and they've just used the Mercurial Scimitar. This is a double cleanse Kalista who is under zero threat now. Arya doesn't do anything to them when they're getting chased down. So it's just the case of trying to save as many lives as possible. So Steel has jumped in as a sacrifice, but it was already over once the fight was turned at that initial part. And it is just the case of Rascal Jester chase them down. They managed to break open the base on the top side. And then we talked about how they went down mid with the remains of the Baron buff. And this was the effective end to the game.
Yeah, and it really was, wasn't it? Like, this was how they decided they were able to actually turn that fight. We were watching this obviously live, and I know myself and Counterfeit and Initialize, as well as yourself, of course, Melvin, we were like, what went wrong that fight? How did Ebby not get that? Oh, and I'm gonna come over to Initialize first for this. This was on a pin at points, but it shouldn't have ever gotten here, really.
I muted myself while I was typing.
We both jumped the two founders.
I was busy getting some clips up, and I managed to mess that one up. Instead, what I was basically saying is, look, they got the inhibitor down. They were stacking up the Drakes. It was looking pretty good. How on earth was Sol supposed to auto attack, and then eventually hit this point where couple major picks onto Udapon, and then you do hit that hyper late game where suddenly Recap is hitting for massive amounts, where he is surviving the Lee Sin kicks, where those little things start going in their favor. And we, for all that we say that teams or squads and competitions scale better, the hyper late game is kind of not something you necessarily talk about in terms of scaling. Sometimes you get to that 45-minute-ish mark, and certain champions come right back in again. And like Kalista, in some ways, is one of those where double cleanse plus all that lifesteal. Like, if you do not kill them in one go, they will survive. And they just couldn't find the engages. Secret played it phenomenally in the late game as well when you do get a bit tankier on the rel. The final Aria blow up on him notwithstanding, but it did become increasingly difficult for DFM to set up and poke for long enough because objectives were burning too quickly for them to actually put down meaningful poke.
Benefit, coming over to you for any last closing thoughts.
I think for me, one thing which we haven't really talked about so much as of yet is we kind of got what we wanted out of Hachimecha in that last game, which is that we wanted Hachimecha to be there with a big team fight ultimate, because they are sure as hell aren't going to do anything when it comes to proximity anywhere else. And that's what they did have here. They were able to be a difference maker. I really liked what we're seeing there. It may have been an incredibly tight, incredibly long game as well, but that was the game plan for Rascal Jester. I'd love to see them just run that back, do that over again, and really put DFM into a tough spot.
Well, game 3 is almost upon us, gentlemen, but we're going to take a short break here at the desk. But when we return, we'll get everybody prepped and ready for game number 3. The 3-0 isn't here, boys. We've got 1-1 on the board. Let's go. Silver Scrapes? Who knows?